Sacrifices or no sacrifices? 10b. Good morning, Charles. Good morning, Gary. Good morning, Bill. 10b. So Rabbi Eliezer learned that a asham offering, the other offering brought for transgressions, called an asham. They probably check as the guilt offering. I'm not sure what makes you more guilty or less guilty, but that's what it's called. So he says that it's compared to a chatas, just like a chatas, slaughtered for the wrong intentions. It invalidates it. So too a asham offering. Which Rabbi Yeshua didn't like that. So we're going to go back now into what Rabbi Yeshua said originally. Amar lo Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua said, well, im amers bechatas shekain doma lemala. Rabbi Yeshua said, you can't learn an asham from a chatas because a chatas, when you throw the blood on, it goes on top of that red string, not the bottom. So you see, it's different. So now we're going to ask a number of, why did Rabbi Yeshua choose that rebuttal? He could have chosen 10 other rebuttals. Why did he choose that one? So the rebuttal he said was a chatas is different because the blood is thrown on top of the string. In asham, the blood is thrown below the string. So they're different. That's why you cannot learn one from the other. So now we're going to say, why did you choose that rebuttal? The lay, he should have told Rabbi Eliezer, lo, chatas is different. You can bring the blood, at least on Yom Kippur. You bring it into the inside of insides, meaning you sprinkle that blood in an inner part of the temple. That's why it's different. So why did he say that rebuttal? He says, no, bechatos hachitzonios kamrin. No, we're talking about the regular chatas offering that's brought in its regular place. We're not talking about the chatas that's brought in the inner altar. That's why he didn't say that. So bechatos hachitzonios kamrin shim nichnas dama lifnim psula. That so we're talking about the chatas hachitzonios. Now we're saying shim nichnas dama lifnim psula. Let's say you would bring a outer chatas's blood inside in the inner part of the temple. That's going to invalidate it, as opposed to an asham, which it's not going to invalidate it. So what does Rabbi Eliezer hold? Is still Rabbi Eliezer af asham? Rabbi Eliezer hold that an asham will be the same thing. An asham offering that you bring its blood to the inner altar, that is going to invalidate it. That has to be brought on the outer altar. So Rabbi Yeshua said you can't learn one from another because the chatas, if the blood is brought on the inner part of the altar, on the inner altar, it's going to invalidate it. So what did Rabbi Eliezer hold? He held that an asham will follow suit, and we'll see later what his reasoning is, or what his source is. That an asham will also follow suit. Another potential rebuttal: shekain mechaperes al chayvei krisos. A chatas offering atones for chayvei krisos, for things that involve kares. So that's why don't Rabbi Yeshua say that rebuttal? Because it says gmara mechatos de shmias kol. The other chatas of shmias kol, where you Rabbi Yeshua's asking why did Rabbi Yeshua say that a chatas is different because it atones for chayvei kares? Because the reason is that Rabbi Eliezer learns from a chatas de shmias kol. What's a chatas de shmias kol? The shmias kol is when you hear when you're a witness and someone makes you swear, and you swear that you don't know testimony, and then you're found to be a liar. So that's called. So then you have to bring a sacrifice for that also, and that's called a chatas de shmias kol. And that Rabbi Eliezer says that atones. That's also called a chatas, and it does not atone for kares. So the reason why Rabbi Yeshua didn't ask that rebuttal was because there is a chatas offering that does not atone for kares, called the chatas de shmias kol. Another suggestion, chatas is different because shekain te'una arba matanos. You have to place 4 placements of blood on the altar. You have to put 4 sprinklings of blood when you throw the blood. That's unique by a chatas. So why don't Rabbi Yeshua say that a chatas is different? Because it needs these 4 blood sprinklings. So that we say because Rabbi Yishmael. Because maybe Rabbi Eliezer held like Rabbi Yishmael, who says, Kol adamim tunim arba matanos, that all the sprinkling requires 4 applications of the blood. According to Rabbi Yishmael, they all require that. As we'll see in 40 Daf, it says, Rashi says. So the reason why he couldn't differentiate a chatas from an asham in terms of 4 sprinklings, because maybe Rabbi Eliezer held like Rabbi Yishmael that everything requires 4 sprinklings. Okay. But out of those 4 sprinklings, a chatas is shekain te'una al arba karanos. It has to be placed on 4 corners, not just any, or on 4 corners. So that's what makes the chatas unique. If that's what makes the chatas unique, so why didn't Rabbi Yeshua respond that a chatas is different? Because it has to be placed on 4 corners. Why didn't he say that? So says the Gemara now, according to that reasoning, ha'ika etzba, you have to do with your finger. Ha'ika carrying, you got to put it on the corner. Ha'ika chuda has to be on the sharp part of the corner. So you have all these other differences also that differentiate a chatas from an asham. So according to your reasoning that you're getting very nitty gritty, I'll show you 3 more differences between a chatas and a asham with your finger on the corner or the sharp part. So at the end of the day, what's the reason why Rabbi Yeshua didn't use these differentiations between this and an asham? You're right. There are many differences between a chatas and an asham, and basically Rabbi Yeshua only mentioned one of them. But yes, you're right. He could have mentioned a variety of other differences between a chatas and an asham, which he felt are enough of a reason that one cannot learn out one from the other. Amar Mak. So going back to what their discussion, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Amar lo Rabbi Yeshua. Lo im amris bechatas is paraphrasing now. Rabbi Yeshua at the end of the day said that you, Rabbi Eliezer, who wants to compare an asham to a chatas offering, they're not comparable because a chatas is sprinkled on top of the red string and an asham is not. And that's enough of a difference to differentiate between a chatas and an asham. So now, Leimalei Rabbi Eliezer should have responded like this: Asham nami damo lamala. Rabbi Eliezer should have said, I hold that an asham is also sprinkled on top. So therefore, it's not a rebuttal. That's what Rabbi Eliezer should have said. Amar Abaye, why didn't he say that? It sounds like as an asham's blood cannot be sprinkled on top. Why can't it be sprinkled on top? How do you know that's not true? Asham damo lamala lo matzis amas. You can't say that. Why not? Kal v'chomer me ola. We're going to learn a kal v'chomer from an ola. Uma ola, just like a fully burnt offering. Ma ola, shehi kollel, it's fully consumed, and yet its dama is lamata. See, it sounds like a certain stringency that it's fully consumed, and yet there's a leniency that the blood could be under the red string. In asham she'eno kollel, an asham which is not fully burnt, doesn't have that stringency. Lo kol shekain, for sure, its blood's going to be below the red string. So, therefore, an asham is learned from an ola that its blood is going to be below the red string. Says the Gemara, not so fast. Mala ola shekain ena mechaperes. An ola offering does not atone. An asham offering atones. So there's a stringency in the asham that it comes for atonement. So maybe it's not a good kal v'chomer. To that we say chatas ha'ok tochia. The sin offering, which is a bird sin offering, will prove to you that malachatas ha'ok. Sorry, will prove to you that even though it does come for atonement, and yet still the blood is sprinkled under the red string. So you see that not coming for atonement is not a reason to reject the kal v'chomer, because we have a chatas oath which comes for atonement, and yet that's also under the red string. Yeah. So then we say, hold on, but a chatas of is different. Why? Mal chatas of sheken einam min zevach. Maybe you'll say, no, the chatas of is less stringent. It doesn't come from an animal that needs to be slaughtered. It comes from a bird. A bird, you do malika, you don't do slaughtering. To that we say, no, ola tochiach. An ola offering does come from an animal that gets slaughtered, and its blood is also under. So you have an ola on the one hand, does not atone, but yet its blood goes under the red string. You have a chatas of, a sin offering, which is brought with a bird, which does not get slaughtered, and yet its blood goes under the string. So therefore, what do you say? Lo reizeh, they're not similar to each other, because an ola is full, it does not come for atonement. A oaf does not get slaughtered. Lo reizeh. However, a tzara shava sheba, they have a commonality. What's that? Shein kachei kadashim v'daman lamata. They are both the similar level of sanctity, kachei kadashim, the higher level of sanctity of the animal. It has a smaller time limit of when to eat it, and it's more restricted in where you can eat it and where you can slaughter it. Because it's holier, it has more restrictions. V'daman lamata, and yet, even though it's so holy, the blood gets sprinkled under the red string. Afani, so to me, avi asham, I'm going to therefore include an asham, says Rabbi Eliezer. In asham is also kodesh kadashim. It also is under the category of very holy sacrifices. And v'damo lamata, and its blood application will be under the red string. Amar le Rava miparzakia le Ravashi, to Ravashi. V'lifra, but can't you ask a rebuttal on this? What would be that rebuttal? Ma'alat hada shabbat shebehen shekem ein lahen kitzva. Tomer ba'asham sheyesh la kitzva. Those don't have a set time. Sorry. Yeah, those don't have a set time, the chatas ha'of and the ola. But in asham has a set time. Now, what is the set time of the asham?
Minimum value.
Oh, sorry, not a set time. Yeah, thank you. A minimal value. Sorry about that. Yeah, they all have they don't have a minimum value. Whatever you can afford, you can afford. But an asham uniquely has a minimal value, which is, I think, two shkalim. It has to be minimally 2 shkalim. Special rule by an asham. Not so expensive, right? So that would be a rebuttal. You see that those 2 offerings, they have a leniency to them, that they don't have any minimal requirement. Maybe only such cases the blood is thrown under the red string. But an asham has a stringency, and therefore you cannot learn that the asham from there. Ella hainu taiman Rabbi Eliezer the Amar Kra. Rabbi Eliezer must learn from the following: Hakohen hamachate osa, osa dama lamala ve'ein damo shel acher lamala. It's the verse by a sin offering says its blood goes on top, its blood and nobody else's blood, not even an asham, nothing, only its blood, and that's the source that only a chatas offering the blood gets sprinkled on top. If that's true, so then say the same thing by a chatas, meaning chatas nami nema osa lishma sheira shelo lishma psula. Once you're saying that, whenever it says it in the section of the Torah referring to a sin offering, and you derived its blood goes on top, and no one else's blood goes on top, so then why don't you say its offering has to be for its sake, and if not, it's invalid? To exclude any other offering that's brought not for the right, with the wrong intentions, it would not be invalid. Only a chatas offering, if it's brought with the wrong intentions, would be invalid, but no other offering. But that's not true, because Rabbi Eliezer holds that a asham offering, if brought for the wrong intentions, is going to be invalid. So we have an inconsistency. When it comes to the blood, you derive it. So only a chatas on top and nothing else. When it comes to having the right intentions in mind, you're much more liberal. You don't say only a chatas. You say a chatas, a asham. So if that's true, how did you choose to derive it over there and not it over here? How did you do that? Osalish maksher or shalosh mapsula. But hashar zevachim, and the rest of the slaughtered offerings, bein lishman, bein shalolishman, shein are going to be kosher. And that's not true because you hold that an asham is also going to be invalid if you have the wrong intention. So we say hahu osa lav dafka. Obviously, the osa, it's offering when it comes to the right intentions. You cannot derive that the same way you derived the other it's. Why not? Because the hashayir Pesach, we know already that a Pesach offering, if brought on the 14th for the wrong intentions, is going to be invalid. So obviously, when it says it by a chatas, it cannot come to validate every other offering that's brought for the wrong intentions, because we know that a Pesach offering will be invalid if slaughtered for the wrong intention. So hachanami, so therefore you cannot derive that. Says the Gemara, hold on. When it comes to the blood sprinkled on top or on bottom, hachanami lav dafka. You should say the same thing. It can't come to only specify a sin offering that blood has to be sprinkled on top and nothing else. The hashayir ola sa'o, the bird offering brought as a ola, that blood also gets sprinkled on top. So it can't come to exclude everything else because you have a bird ola offering, which you do sprinkle the blood on top of the red string. So if that's true, so include the asham. Says the Gemara, no, but bizvicha mihalo shayir midi. That's by a bird offering that the blood is sprinkled on top. But by any offering that you actually slaughter, there is no other offering that you bring the blood on top of the red string. Therefore, when it says it by a chatas, it's coming to tell you only the chatas offering gets the blood thrown on top. No other offering that's slaughtered will have its blood thrown on top. Okay, that's one. The Baisema, or another answer is going to be Hamani Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Shimon. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer goes like Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Shimon. The Amar Hay Makom Lachud. The Hay Makom Lachud. Yeah, maybe the reason why we don't consider a bird offering to be excluded by the chatas offering is because we go like Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Shimon that says that the placement of the blood that is sprinkled on top of the red string by a chatas behema, by the chatas animal, and by the ola, the bird offering, which is brought as an ola, are two different places. They're not the same place. So really, there is no other animal that's blood is sprinkled in the exact place that a sin offering is sprinkled. And therefore, when it says it has to be placed on top of the red string, it's really coming to specify only a chatas and no other offering, not even a asham. Let's see where we see this. The Tanya, the Brisa says, "Damim hatachtonim nitanin michuta sikra." So the blood, damim hatachtonim. Yeah, the blood that's sprinkled under the red string. There's the bloods, the bottom bloods, so to speak, the ones that are sprinkled by the red string and below. The ha'elyonim and the upper bloods, I mean the blood sprinkled on top is michuta sikra ulamala, is going to be on top of the red string. But Amar le Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Shimon b'med dvar amurim the olas ha'o. That's only by a bird ola offering. Aval bechatas behema, but by an animal sin offering, he atzma einasa ela al gufa shel keren. We're not, even though the sin offering is sprinkled on top of the red string, but according to Reb Shimon, the son of Rabbi Eliezer, it's not just anywhere on top of the red string. It's specifically on the corner. Specifically, keren means horn. It's not talking about a horn. It's not there's a protruding area that it's on the altar on the top, that it's sprinkled specifically there. Yeah, Rash says it's a certain stone that's an amma by an amma that's on top of the altar, and that's where the chatas is sprinkled. So once again, when the Torah says only a chatas is sprinkled on top, so according to this, what it means is only a chatas is sprinkled not only on top of the red string, in that area on top of the altar, and no other sacrifice is sprinkled in that specific area. And therefore, Rabbi Eliezer will say that an asham offering cannot be learned out of a chatas offering regarding where the blood is sprinkled, because the Torah specifies it's sprinkled there and nothing else is sprinkled there. When it comes to having the right intent, even though it says the chatas has to have the right intent, but there we know that the Pesach offering of the page. Tanan Hassam, so we have a mission that says, Shahaya Rabbi Akiva Omer, Rabbi Akiva would say, Kol Davim Shenichnasu Laheichal Lechaper Psulim. So Rabbi Akiva said, all the blood that enters into the Heichal, into the holy part of the temple, Lechaper, to atone, is pasul. So meaning, the offerings, that blood is supposed to be sprinkled on the outer altar. If you bring it into the inner altar, to the heichal, to the area that's kodesh, so that is going to invalidate that blood. So don't do that. Yeah. So the chachamim omrim, no, chatas bilvad. No, not any offering. Only a sin offering. Only a sin offering whose blood is brought into the inner area, into the kodesh, into the heichal. Only that blood is going to be. Only that's going to invalidate that sacrifice, but nothing else. And Rabbi Eliezer Omer Afa Asham, consistent with his own opinion, even in Asham. How do I know? Shenamar kechatas keasham. Rabbi Eliezer now in the second place we see this compares an Asham to a chatas. The first place was our Mishnah that says that if you slaughter the Asham for the wrong intentions, it's going to invalidate the offering. How do I know? And now he's saying if you bring its blood into the inner area, you're not supposed to, so that's also going to invalidate the offering. How do I know? Just like a chatas is just like an asham. They're compared to each other. So now let's analyze this. Rabbi Eliezer, I understand he just spoke out his reasoning. He has a verse that compares the two offerings. So one is learned out from the other, and it's going to cause an invalidation. That makes a lot of sense. Ela Rabbanan Ma'itaima, what about the rabbis? What is their reasoning that they say that only a chatas offering, the blood is invalid and nothing else? Where do they learn that from? Amarava. Yeah, Amarava, Asham Nichnas Damo Lifnim, Pasul, Lo Matzis Amris. So it's a little bit like we're working backwards. How do you know that only a chatas is going to be invalid? So it sounds like, what do you want to say? An asham should also be invalid, like Rabbi Eliezer said? He can't do that. Why? I can't say that. Why can't the Chachamim say that? Why can't they say that? Because we're going to learn a kal v'chomer from an ola. Kal v'chomer me ola. Ma ola, turning the page. Shehi Kollel. An ola offering has a certain stringency to it, and it's fully consumed on the altar. Shehi Kollel. Nichnesa damo lifnim ksheira. And yet there's a leniency that if you bring the blood inside the area where it's not supposed to be, the offering is still kosher, it's still valid. In Asham, a guilt offering which does not have that stringency, it's not fully burnt on the temple. Asham she'enu Kollel, lo kol shekain. Is it not for sure its blood that's brought inside for sure should not invalidate the offering. So that's why the Chachamim say that an Asham you cannot invalidate the blood of an asham if it's brought inside, because it can't be any more strict than an ola offering. And an ola is so strict it gets fully burnt up, and yet if its blood is brought inside, so then it's not going to invalidate it. So me, the asham, who's less stringent than the ola, for sure I'm going to have that leniency as well. Says the Gemara, no, you can't compare an ola to an asham. It's very different. The Ola has a big leniency. It's not coming to atone, coming as a gift. So maybe something which doesn't come to atone, if its blood gets brought in and new, it's not going to invalidate it. However, in Asham, which comes to atone, it's so strict, that blood brought inside, so that is going to invalidate it. So to that we say a minchas chota tokia. So you have the one of the flower offerings is a sin offering, a minchas chota, and that I'll prove to you that even something that comes for atonement, a minchas chota, the sin offering which is brought from flour, so it's a sin offering, it's coming to atone, and yet its blood if its blood is brought inside the place in the Kodesh and the Heichal, it's not going to invalidate the offering. It's not really its blood, sorry. It's going to be its flour. There's no blood by the flour offering. But that is not going to invalidate the offering. Yeah. Okay. So that rebuttal which you had by an Ola, it's lenient because it doesn't atone, we see that's not true. That's not a good rebuttal because a flour offering of a flour sin offering, which comes to atone, its blood it shouldn't, but if it's brought inside, then it's not going to invalidate it. So really, our Kal Vachomer stays strong. From an Ola has a stringency that it's fully consumed, and yet its blood brought inside does not invalidate. In Asham, which is not fully consumed, if its blood is brought inside, it's also not going to invalidate the offering. Okay. Says the Gemara, but maybe you should say that a chatas of should prove the point that what? That a chatas of is a bird sin offering, and that should prove to us what that blood, if you bring that blood in, it's going to be invalid. And if you bring the blood in, it's going to be invalid. So therefore, you should learn the asham from the chatas ha'of that it also, if you bring the blood in, it should be invalid. Why don't we say that? Because we say chatas ha'of is bayad Rabbi Oven. A chatas ha'of is actually a Rabbi Oven's question later on, 80 daf from now, that Rabbi Oven had that question. What about a chatas ha'of? If you bring the blood of a sin offering, which is from a bird, you bring its blood into the inner area that you're not supposed to, does that invalidate the offering or not? That itself is a question. It sounds like an unresolved question. So we couldn't bring that as a proof because that itself is unresolved. Okay. The lifra, we could still ask, Mala minchas chota shekain eno. Take out this. Yeah. Mala minchas chota shekain ena min hazevach. A minchas chota, the flour offering, the sin flour offering, it's not slaughtered because it's a flour offering, and therefore what? And therefore there's no blood, right? And therefore, so maybe you'll say only such a thing that it's not going to invalidate the offering, but maybe if it would slaughter, if it's an offering which gets slaughtered, bringing its blood in will invalidate the offering. And therefore, you should learn asham. You say asham also, if you bring the blood in, it should invalidate the offering. I would say no. In ola tochiach, the ola offering proves to you that even something which is slaughtered does not necessarily going to invalidate the offering if you bring the blood inside. So don't tell me it's only a flour offering where there's no blood. In ola offering where there is blood, it's slaughtered, and you bring the blood inside, will not invalidate the offering. So the chazer adin lo rizak lo rizak. So you have the ola and you have the minchas chota. Both offerings, one atones, but it's not slaughtered. One is slaughtered, but it doesn't atone. So each one has something the other one doesn't have. So we say, what's the commonality? The Gemara, it's very important to find a common ground. You have two different things that are vastly different, but they find a common ground. Once you find a common ground, you can include much more. As long as everyone has their own opinions and they can't find the common ground. So, yeah, there you go. So, they're both super holy. They're very high level of holiness. And the nichnas lifnim ksherim, and if their blood is brought inside the heichal, the kodesh, but it's not supposed to, but the offering is still going to be good. So to me, afani avi asham, I'm going to bring the guilt offering, shehu kodesh kadashim. It's also a high level of sanctity. The nichnas damo lifnim, and it's that when its blood is brought inside, kosher. That's going to be kosher. That's going to be valid. Okay. Omer le Rava mi barnish le Rav Ashi. Says Rava mi barnish to Rav Ashi. The lifrok, you should ask the following. Rebuttal. Ma lehatzara shavish behen shekain ein lehen kitzva. Same as before. That's not fair because the minchas chota, the sin offering that's brought with flour, and the bird offering that's brought as an olah, they have a certain leniency to them. What's that leniency? There's no set price. It could be as cheap as it could be. In Asham, we said, it has a set price, 2 shkalim. There has a minimal amount. You can't bring it less than 2 shkalim. So Tomar ba'Asham sheyesh lo kitzva. So maybe that's not a good source. Because an Asham is different. It has a certain stringency to it that has a set price. And therefore you can't derive that from the other two. Ella hainu taimayu derabanan. Why did the rabbi say that only a chatas, if its blood is brought inside, is going to invalidate the offering and nothing else? The Amar Kra, the verse says, Dama. Yeah, mi Dama, from its blood. From its blood, Dama shel zu, below Dama shel acher. Only its blood, if it's brought inside, is going to invalidate the offering, but not anybody else's blood. Only its blood. So really, it's a source. Really, the Torah is pointing out the exclusivity. That's the word, yeah. That's the exclusivity of a chatas. Is that a word? Yeah. You think so? Okay. We'll take Jules' word for it. Yeah. So he's an English expert. So it's after Webster. After Webster, yeah. Now it is. I think AI, whatever. Yeah. Okay. So, just kidding. So a chatas offering is exclusive. That only its blood is. If it's brought inside, it's going to invalidate the offering, but nothing else. Not even an asham. Even the other guilt offering, even the other offering that atones for things, if its blood is brought inside, it is not going to invalidate the offering. That's all good for the rabbis. What does the other opinion hold that says that an asham's blood will invalidate the offering? Ve'idach dama below bisara. Only if you bring its blood, not coming to exclude other offerings' blood, rather coming to exclude its meat. If you bring its meat inside there, it's not going to validate the offering. Only its blood. And the other opinion, the rabbis. So they say dama. It says blood, and then it says its blood. So there's an extra dama. Sounds like the extra hay, the extra dot in the hay. It could have said dam, but it said dama. So therefore, it learns that out. But and the other opinion says dam dama lo darish. It doesn't expound this expression of dam dama. It just it doesn't expound that, and therefore it's not a question. Okay, well, we have till 6:10. Okay, you're open for 6:20 there. It's good according to the rabbis that say in Asham that shechted for not the right intent. You shech the Asham and you have in mind any other offering. The rabbis hold that it's still a valid offering, just it's not going to count for the person's obligation, and they have to bring another offering. But the offering itself is not going to lose its sanctity. So Bishmal the Rabbanan Dam Asham Shach the Sholishma Kasher Hainu de Iskish Mincha Lechatas Mincha LaAsham. According to them, it's very good that we compare the mincha offering to the chatas and the mincha offering to the asham. Okay, let's see what that means. The Tanya says in the Bryce, Rabbi Shimon, Omer, Kodesh Kedashim he kechatas u'ka'asham. The verse tells us in Vayikra that you can't make the offerings from chametz. Rather, kodesh hakadashim hi kechatos ve'che'asham. And this verse is talking about the flour offering, and it says there it's like a chatos and it's like an asham. So how is the flour offering like a chatas, like a sin offering, and like an asham, like a guilt offering? So let's see. Minchas chote harehi kechatos. The flour offering, the sin flour offering, the sin offering brought from flour. Harehi kechatos. It's like a chatas. What do you mean like a chatas? Lefikach. What's going to happen? So by the flour offering, there's still, we know by a regular slaughtered offering, you have the four primary avodas, it's called primary services, right? You have the slaughtering, you have the accepting the blood, throwing in the blood, and the walking to the altar. Those four also exist by the flour offering, just in their own way. So, for example, we have kmitza, where you gather up the flour. So that's like the slaughtering. So just like if you got kamtza shloshma psula, if you do kmitza with the wrong intentions, then it's going to invalidate the offering. Just like if you slaughter it for the wrong intentions, it'll also invalidate the offering. And a minchas nedava, though, a voluntary flour offering, that's harehi ke'asham. That's like the guilt offering in terms of what? Lefikach kamtza shloshma kshera. If you do kmitza, but you have in mind a different offering, that's not going to invalidate the offering. Rather, it's going to remain valid, just like a asham offering. And that's very good according to the rabbis of our Mishnah that only say that there are two offerings for the wrong intentions that are going to invalidate it. Chatas and a Pesach, but not an asham. So therefore, the kmitza, the gathering of the flour, will have the same rules as the slaughtering. If it's a chatas for the wrong reason, it's going to invalidate. If it's an asham for the wrong reason, it's not going to invalidate. Who is that? What? Who let him in yesterday? Kollel to the shoulder. So maybe he has a check. I'm gonna give him a check. Oh, no, he's joking. He's saying who let Adam in? Who let him? Yeah. So maybe Adam brought a check. That's why he got let in. So yeah. So he knows we're talking about him. It's okay. So Ella, we see a smile from the back of his head. Ella the Rabbi Eliezer, Lamai Hilchasa. He feels loved. It's good. So Ella the Rabbi Eliezer, Lamai Hilchasa. According to Rabbi Eliezer, what's the comparison between a flour offering to a chatas and an asham? What's that comparison? Iskish mincha le chatas u mincha le asham. The flour offering is compared to a sin offering, and the flour offering is compared to the guilt offering. So lechiidach Rabbi Shimon. It's compared for the other opinion of Rabbi Shimon. What did Rabbi Shimon say? Titnan shelo b'kli sharis psula. Rabbi Shimon Makshir, putting the flour into a non-holy vessel will invalidate it, according to the first opinion. But according to Rabbi Shimon Makshir, that's going to be fine. Even if it goes into a vessel, which is not what we call a kli sharis, a holy vessel, it's still going to be kosher. The Rabbi Yehuda Breder Bechia, my time Rabbi Shimon. What's the reason of Rabbi Shimon that he says that? Amar Kra, Kodesh Kedashim Hi Kechatas U'Ka'asham Ba'li Ovda, Biyad Ovda, Biyamin Kechatas, and Bikli Ovda Bismol Ke'asham. So it's compared to a chatas and like an asham that you have to do with your right hand, just like a chatas offering. So to the kmitza, the gathering the flour, has to be with the right hand, like a chatas. However, when you're holding the vessel, that can be in the left hand, like a asham. Yeah. Yeah. So says the Gemara of Rabbi Shimon, Ha'ikra Mapik Le'lahachi, Mapik Le'lahachi. It sounds like Rabbi Shimon derives from the same verse two different things. What were the two things? One was, one sec. Those are Shimon's two things. One was it's compared to Chadas and Asham, and the other one is, meaning the same verse that compares the flour offering to a chatas and a asham. So it sounds like it's comparing it on the one hand to having the right intentions, and on the other hand, it's comparing it to doing it with the right hand, doing it with a holy vessel. So you're comparing the two services for two different things. So says the Gemara, no. Iker kra l'chid Rabbi Yehuda b'rei Rabbi Yehuda asa. The real verse, the primary exposition is for what we said earlier in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Chia. No, sorry, not earlier, but what we're saying now. Really, the verse is coming to teach you that you have to do the flour with your right hand and the asham with your in a holy vessel. That's really what it's for. And that which we invalidate, the flour offering, the flour sin offering, if it's done for the wrong intentions, that's time achrinu. That's a different reason. What's that reason? Chatas time amai diksiv behi minchas chota. So chatas time amai diksiv behi. It says he. Only this offering has to have the right intentions, and if not, it's going to be invalid. Minchas chota na miksiv behi. It says he also by a minchas chota. Here it really means he. Yeah, it says he by a minchas chota, by the sin offering of a flour offering, and to teach you only this flour offering, if you have the wrong intentions, it's going to be invalid, but not any other offering. One minute. According to the rabbis, why is there a comparison of an asham to a chatas? That which it says it's kechatas to asham is to teach you that just like a chatas you have to lean on it, so to the asham you have to lean on it, but not for anything.